Welcome to the Buzz Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Mosquito.
And I'm Maureen Nylin.
The Buzz Podcast is where business, technology, and innovation collide. It's where we deep dive into candid conversations with leaders who are pushing the boundaries in healthcare, technology, and beyond.
It's also where you're going to hear industry experts who are rewriting the rules, and in some cases, they're breaking them. So don't forget to join us for each new episode and like and subscribe to the Buzz Podcast.
Welcome back to The Buzz, the podcast where we bring the latest and greatest in healthcare innovation, emerging technologies, and industry insights. I'm your host, Mike Mosquito, and with me is my always amazing co-host, Maureen Nylin. How you doing today, Maureen?
I'm awesome, Mike. I tell you what, I have been so excited to have this conversation today. We have another fantastic guest, and she has an incredible story that I can't wait for you all to hear.
Well, I am absolutely wonderful. It's almost wonderful to have anyone on this show after what we've had going on here in Atlanta with no power and this destruction that's gone on. But to have Tanya join us today is going to be amazing. Our guest today, Tanya Little, the Chief Commercial Officer of Vitality Group. Tanya's career has spanned multiple industries and continents. She's been weaving together experiences from all over like a patch quilt, and it's tied together with a golden thread of human connection. Today, she's going to bring that to us. We welcome you, Tanya, to The Buzz. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Look forward to chatting.
All right, Tanya, let's jump right into this career of yours. It's been fascinating. It's been amazing. You've had different industries in front of you, different countries in front of you, yet there's always a thread of human connection that ties it all together. Tell me a little bit about, share with us, how does this story come together?
I'd love to. So I'm a London School of Economics trained behavioral economist. I'll start there. I am very interested in what motivates people, why they do what they do, and how we can help shape behavior. So I'm also a recovering management consultant. I'm a certified coach, and I'm just an eternal student, as you say, of the art and science of connection. So I'm currently, as you said, Chief Commercial Officer for Vitality. Vitality is a digital health platform that combines data, actuarial, and behavioral science to get people to do the thing that is good for their health. And that's both inside and outside of care-seeking moments. But if I look back, I was born in South Africa. That's why I speak funny. I did my master's at London School of Economics, and then I worked for Goldman Sachs in London, and then I returned to South Africa to consult for McKinsey and Accenture. And since then, I've worked across various industries, across countries. In my post-consulting life, I've spent a lot of time in financial services and healthcare, and I've straddled every possible sphere. So strategy, execution, operations, remuneration, org development, and now sales and marketing and go-to-market. And in 2014, I trained at the Process Work Institute in Oregon, in Portland, and I was learning to read and work with all things under the surface. The stuff that is not said or spoken, but the stuff that drives what is said and spoken. So if you reflect on all of this is a patchwork quilt, like you said, Mike. The golden thread is just my passion for leveraging the art and science of human connection to do the things. Those things could be leading teams, influencing customer behavior, closing sales, helping organizations navigate change. It's really human connection that is driving outcomes in all of those instances.
Oh, that is beautiful. And I will be honest with you. I think I could just sit here and listen to you talk about anything with that accent. It's lovely. It's just lovely. But I digress. I'll get back to the script.
Thank
We're going to
you.
talk now about everything that you have done. And it's a menagerie of different opportunities that you've had to work with people. And essentially, you've taken all of those experiences. Now it's just service to the greater good. And for you to bring that human connection back, I want to explore a little bit more about behavioral science, specifically in healthcare, because I've heard you speak about it, but I feel like we've just scratched the surface. I want to know more about it, and I want you to tell me why it's important.
I love this question. Obviously, I love this question. It brings together behavioral science and healthcare. Like, what could be wrong with this question? So, if we look at behavioral science, it is truly about understanding why people make the decisions they do, and then how we can work with their innate biases to influence those decisions in a positive way. So in healthcare, this matters a lot because nearly half of the premium dollar is driven by lifestyle and care-related modifiable behaviors. Things like diet, exercise, adherence to care treatment plans, all of that. And interestingly, this impact is elastic, meaning it increases with age and chronicity. So as people get older and as their risk profiles, they get more risky from a health perspective, it matters even more to make sure that you are understanding behavioral biases and helping them tackle those. So if we want to move from a world of should to a world of is, we need to be working with behavioral biases, not against them, so we can change behavior. So the kind of things we think about, like if you consider healthcare, why when I'm walking down the aisle in a grocery store, I'm thinking about my nutrition and I reach for 4% fat yogurt or 96% fat free. I'm going for 96% fat free. It makes me feel amazing, doing something great for my health. But it's the same mathematical formula, like what is going on there. That is the idea of framing. So, the framing of the entirety as positive is going to make me reach for that and think a particular thing as I do. Similarly, as humans, we're just over optimistic. We're like, other people suffer from health threats, other people get disease burden, other people die early. I know I don't move much, maybe I smoke, maybe I drink too much, but I'm okay. And so the over optimism that characterizes human behavior is around, well, how could I counter that? How could I serve up maybe a reality check for someone where maybe I give them an age? We do a vitality age in this instance. It's a risk modified age. And it says, you think that you're 32. Let's roll with 32. You think at 32, but your vitality age is 38. What is going on there? What is the difference in those 6 years? Well, it is the risk that I create through my lifestyle behaviors. And so that's a moment when people go, wow. And they wake up and they think about their health. One more example, and then I'll leave it at that. But loss aversion, this idea that we really value losses more than gains. And so, we run a program at Vitality where we say, well, with your employer or your plan, we'll give you an Apple Watch at the beginning of a 2-year period, and you get it for free. And here's a set of things that you need to do. And if you do those things, you're not going to pay monthly installments. If you do 50% of those things, you'll pay 50% of the monthly installment. And so we go. And we find that is incredibly effective. When you have to pay in first and get rebated or reimbursed, it's a totally different impact, less of an impact. So again, it's just the idea of how do you work with these crazy irrational human biases to make sure you truly shift behavior for good.
So one more quick question, Mike, if you don't mind. I just want to ask, are people even aware that they have these biases? Because now I'm starting to think about, I'm in that grocery store and
Right.
I do that calculation. I don't even know that I knew that I was doing that. And as soon as you said it, it immediately connected and I went, oh, I do that. Where does that come from? Am I unique in this experience?
You are so typical of this experience. We don't, and this is what's so interesting, is we don't see our own biases. Sometimes we spot them in others. Sometimes we can see like the paradoxes in people's behavior with like, that doesn't really stack up, that doesn't really make sense. But typically when we are behaving, it seems entirely rational. Even when we are thinking about it, it is rational. A lot of the time, we're not even thinking about it. You're operating on kind of an autopilot, learned behavior, habits. And that's why it takes a lot of work to undo those and to create awareness, A, and then B, behavior change.
That's pretty weird because you're right. We all do it. I sit there and I look at myself. So I have those I will tell you those those traits behind me as well. But I will tell you my risk score at points in my life have been 200, not 6 years difference. I've done some stuff that probably have aged me on out of here.
You know what? It is never too late to start, Mike. You just got to keep going. Yeah.
And I think everyone should know, what are they adding to their life that could be adding to that risk score? I think that's
Bingo.
something you should be conscious of. So that's why when we bring folks on like yourself, Tanya, it is about helping folks understand what's around their world, what's in their world that could be affecting them unconsciously by what they do, the choices they make simply as walking down that grocery store aisle, or little things you may make, choices you may make throughout your day. Understanding those behavioral science habits that have been studied that have actual feedback and results that show. Yeah. So, with that being said, and this is amazing information. Why should these health plans care about behavioral science? We know they use it. We know the actuaries, they're back there trying to calculate, what they should and should not do. What's in it for them? What's the root science for them on their side of the equation?
Yes. And I mean, it's so interesting because some plan sponsors totally get it immediately. It's obvious to them, and others they're like, I'm spending money on a lot of things. I've got a lot of priorities. Tell me why this matters. So both and. Um, Really, the fundamental is we live in a world characterized by the strange prevention care paradox. So think about it this way: the cost of prevention and doing all the good things, the cost is immediate. I must stand up off the couch and go jogging, or I must do my screenings and it's painful and it's admin and it's just there's lots of friction. The problem is the costs are right there in front of my face, but the benefits are hidden. Sometimes they're totally invisible. I only realize, like, future me is going to realize the benefits of me doing these things. Current me sees no real benefit, just cost. If you look on the other side, the benefits of seeking care as a fix are immediate. Think about it this way: I feel sick, I go to the doctor, I get the meds, immediate benefit. And ironically, often the costs are hidden because it can be my employer or plan that is often paying. So what this means is we get this strange underconsumption of good health behaviors, and we get an overconsumption of care. And what we know about care, and particularly in the US, is care is expensive. And if I don't do all the things that are good for me now, I'm going to wind up with even more expensive care down the line as chronic diseases, et cetera, take over. So when we're talking to plan sponsors, we're saying, you have a vested interest in the health of your members and or your employees. We know healthier individuals are more productive. We know they have lower healthcare costs. We know they're generally happier. And so if you can use behavioral science to improve health outcomes as a plan sponsor, then you can see, oh, good, I can reduce costs, I can increase engagement, and I can create healthier, more engaged workforces. And ultimately, there's not a plan or employer that I've chatted to where they're not saying that is ultimately what they want. So it's just about making sure you can see the link as to why behavioral science can help achieve that goal.
What's
And I see that
beautiful
those
about that, no, I was just going to say what I love about it, Mike, is that everybody benefits, right? It's the healthcare
everybody.
companies, they're saving money. It's money they don't have to pay. And we know that that's their methodology. But the patients are still benefiting from this. They're
Yes.
still, their health is improving. So it's a win-win truly. And yeah, so thanks, Mike. My mind is just exploding right now.
No,
But
it's
Maureen, you're so right. Typically, we see this, no margin, no mission. So you got to do the thing to be commercial so you can achieve the mission. This is a really strange and incredible space where doing the right thing creates the margin, to your point, because the individuals are better off, the plan sponsors are better off, society is better off. It's just this incredibly cool virtuous cycle.
over here on the healthcare side. I have a CIO that says no money, no mission for the CIOs that are listening to this podcast. No
Right.
money, no mission. Can't fund what we don't have, right?
Correct.
You've got to have a reason at the end of this to take these initiatives on. So beyond healthcare, you walk through these care journeys yourself. You've been a consultant. You brought together these initiatives. You've also been a COO for a global healthcare organization.
Right.
Has that behavioral science played a role in navigating change for you? And what have you seen that's impactful for where your steps are in the future?
I mean, and Maureen and I were just chatting about this just before this podcast to say, like, healthcare is really hard. When you're working in a health system, it is super hard. And in particular, change can be hard. But that is a broader statement. Like I would say, Mike, the very odd thing is that so change is inevitable for individuals and for organizations, and yet somehow we are not used to change, and we don't like change. So we see change as the possibility of loss, the possibility of threat, fight or flight kicks in, and we are incredibly creative at devising these overt and covert ways to resist change. Like anything not to embrace change, we'll do it. And so what I've typically seen in my career is for change agents inside organizations, this creates a total puzzle. The perceived change or the proposed change, they're like, this makes total sense. In their minds, it makes sense, but they cannot bring people along the journey. And it's why the new expensive HR system doesn't get embraced on the ground. Doctors look at the new fancy patient app, but they don't promote it with their patients. The leadership norms that everyone signed up for just don't happen in practice. So sometimes we can see and name the resistance, but like when I mentioned to you about the Process Work Institute, sometimes it is what I call below the surface. This is all the things that you will know well: passive aggressive behavior, the meetings in between the meetings, and all these macro decisions that ultimately shape the outcomes that we cannot see on the surface unless you kind of dig a little more. So when I think about behavioral science and change, I think, well, this is one incredibly powerful tool navigating change. Why? Because it helps you understand how and why people are reacting to the change. So when we're designing a change intervention, we can say, what behavioral biases might be at play here? How can we help guide people through change rather than just pretending that, we're rational human beings, biases don't exist, we just hope for the best. And this is why the mastery of behavioral science helps us boost change success, boost change receptivity, whether it's new technologies, new strategies, or restructuring. So I think that is really something that I've thought about a lot. And just the examples that we've discussed, if you can frame things differently, if you can think about what does someone believe they are losing here? Because they absolutely believe they are losing something. You just got to figure out what it is and then mitigate that loss. Then you're in a different kind of a game when we talk about change. And the final thing I would say is behavioral science is super useful, and then you can turbocharge it if you couple it with super communication, which we can talk more about if that is interesting, but the coupling of the two then makes transitions even smoother.
Well, and I do want to talk about that super communication thought process as well, because that's new to me. And when I think of change, I look at it obviously through my own lens. And change, if I've decided that it's worthy, is pretty slick. But if it's being thrust upon me and I'm not getting a choice in it, I'm going to be honest with you, Tanya, I've probably done some passive aggressive behavior myself. I've probably done some meetings between the meetings. So I'm looking for practical tools now. So let's talk about super communication. How can organizations take that and start initiating that into practice?
Beautiful. What makes you different, Maureen? Like what you've just said is typical because we've all done it. What makes you different is you're able to say, like, I've done some of that stuff.
Yeah,
Some people
well,
are not there yet. So I appreciate that.
Let's get in a different committee.
Mike is perfect. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know.
So on the super communication, it's funny that you say you're not familiar with it. And that is, again, it is kind of new. The term
okay.
super communication, you're going to understand the concepts, but like it was coined by a guy called Charles Duhigg. And he only just recently, he's a New York Times bestselling author. He only recently released this new book called Super Communicators, How to Unlock the Secret Language of Connection. And so in that, he's given it a name, but he defines the following. I think these are the three most interesting attributes of super communicators. One, they ask a lot of questions. They ask 10 to 20 times more questions than the average person. And not only are they asking lots of questions, but these questions are deep questions. They're questions not just did you, didn't you? They get to values and they get to experiences. So they're kind of digging deep. The second thing that they do is they pay attention to and they match the type of conversation being had. So I'll give you some examples here. That instance you've been talking to your husband, your wife, your partner, your friend, and you're like, we are totally missing each other in every way, and you're just not quite sure why. Like the content, you're having a conversation about content, but you're still missing each other. It may be one of you is having an emotional conversation. Like, I want to talk about our feelings. So I'm telling you, I had this very bad day, and I'm telling you how this person showed up and how I felt really bad about it. And what's coming back at me maybe is not an emotional response, like, I'm so sorry, that must have been hard. It's more a practical response. Why don't you try doing this next time? So now the practical response is focused on solving a problem, making a plan. Or it could have been a social response, how we relate to each other. Have you ever thought about the dynamic between you and this person? And maybe this is what's getting in the way. And what's so interesting is if I'm having an emotional conversation and you're having a practical conversation, we're going to miss each other. If I'm having a social conversation and you're having an emotional conversation, we're going to miss each other. So super communicators can very quickly figure out what conversation we're having and they match it. And then the third thing that they do is they loop for understanding. So what they're doing here is they're asking a question. So we just established they're good at asking questions. And then they are repeating it so that, I hear in my own words in my own words, I'm explaining what I heard you say. And I'm saying to you, did I get it right? Is that right? Did I capture that? And in that moment, you are feeling exceptionally heard, assuming I'm a good listener and I'm able to, frame it right. And what you find is when super communicators do this, it acts as a change superpower. Because every single transformation, whether it's large or small, it relies on really good idea transference, emotional containment, and buy-in. And when you're in the presence of a super communicator, you're feeling all of those things. I would tell you that as a consultant, but also as a line leader and helping other line leaders, I seldom see that strategy fails because no one has good ideas or lack of strategic intent or a good plan. It's generally that like the human factors are getting in the way. It's all the things that we spoke about: political agendas, prioritization, role clarity, broken telephone. It's all of these things. And so when you take on super communication as a tool, you can get super practical for how you deliver change messages into the org. And I think while we can probably say, oh, I know that person in my life is a super communicator. The truth is anyone can be a good super communicator if you practice. So that's kind of an uplifting and an exciting message.
Love this.
Yeah.
Love this.
And I would guess that most men are not super communicators because we've all
You'd
heard.
be
I
surprised,
didn't
Mike.
know that.
Be surprised.
Maureen, I was reading your face and your body language was like these dudes.
I think it's so practical. We can bring these things into our personal relationships. It's just easy to say. And Tanya, when you said you're having an emotional conversation and the other person that you're with is having a practical conversation, yes, it misses every single time because both people end up walking away feeling like they're not heard and usually a little ticked off and feeling justified in their anger. And so that just continues to, create that chasm. So nobody's communicating well. So yeah, I love this for an organization, but more importantly, I just love that I can hear that and know that I can take that home personally too.
That's right. And it's a strange thing because you both arrived with such good intentions with this conversation.
Right.
It's hard to see how you came unstuck, and this is where it's at.
And sometimes somebody just wants you to listen. I think I've
Right.
learned that over time. Sometimes you're just there for your ears, not for your mouth.
That
I
is astute.
think
Yeah.
I've learned that there, my sales career, my executive career. Sometimes when you enter the room, you're into the room just as a body of reference, not a body or a voice of reference. And so you need to learn that room, be able to read the room. That's why people say that. Read the room, man. Maybe you need to know when to close your mouth. Um, open your ears. And I just finished a session with some folks that brought in an organization of leaders to help them with that understanding of how to engage, how to sell. For this, what you're talking about also is in sales tactics for organizational
Absolutely.
growth, right? Why would someone bring someone like yourself into their organization, Tanya, to help them understand you're going in like a bull in the china shop when you should be listening and understanding how to create a connection first. When you talk
100%.
about going to these association events or going to these conferences and you see an executive and you just bum rush them and you just blah all over them. Again, I don't know what connection you're hoping to make, but it's not
And
the
it's
one
not a good one.
it's
Yeah.
not a good one. And
Yeah.
so I think this is a very good message for those if for organizations that want to learn more about how to make your folks process this journey and manage change because technology is changing, which means the way we engage to sell, implement, educate, train on technology needs to change too. So
Right.
we know that change is inevitable. That's something every business is going to face. It's faster now with AI and all these other technologies on top of us. What practical advice would you give organizations or even individuals who are just getting started in their change journey? What would you tell them they need to focus on when they start down this journey and this path?
You used the word journey twice, and that is where I would start. It's not a one-time event. Like change is a process, change is a journey. So if something is a journey, you need to be patient and you need to be forgiving of yourself and others as you navigate what's going to be an emotional process. So I would start off by saying that is point one, like recognize it for what it is. I typically then break down the journey into manageable chunks, specifically 4 chunks. I learned this framework at McKinsey. It was one of the things that stuck with me, but I think of it in 4 pieces: tell the story, walk the talk, build capability, and align the system. So tell the story is just make sure everyone understands the why. But remember, we have behavioral biases. So those biases are going to filter how I hear your story. So you need to pay attention to biases as you craft the narrative, and you want to tell that story over and over until people actually internalize it in a way that they can feel it rather than just hear it as something external to them. The second is walk the talk, and you know this. Nothing undermines a change effort quicker than like do as I say, not as I do. And so this is the idea of leaders needing to role model the change they want to see. So I have seen countless leaders. They talk about a flat structure. Now in the new structure, it's flat. We're not hierarchical. And then they save themselves the executive parking spot. And in that moment, it's such a small thing, but like the symbol there is like, like flat is good for you, hierarchy is good for me. And so it's just about making sure that like all of those cues are matching up. That's what walk the talk is about. Building capability is how do you help people learn to do things differently? Because if they're going to change, it's by definition going to be different from what they've done before. So you got to make sure that the tools are easy to find and use. That's a practical kind of consideration. But you also have to make sure the process of learning is embraced and not shamed. So it should be great that I say, I don't know. And it should be great that I say, please show me. And the idea of failing, I was listening to a podcast just over the weekend where he was saying, I've never failed. And please don't interpret that as being, that I have hubris. It's because every time I failed, it's just been learning. I call it learning, not failing. So there is that piece. And then the final piece is aligning the system. So again, even if people know what to do and how to do it, they ain't going to change their behavior if you haven't removed friction points for them in the path to change. They also won't change their behavior if they aren't rewarded for changing and feel supported to do the change. So I consulted to an organization a while ago, and they had brought out, I think I mentioned, this new shiny patient app. Couldn't understand why the doctors weren't using it. Like, why aren't you showing your patients this? It's such a great way for them to find what they need. And what they found once they dug a little deeper is that when patients had a problem with the app, so some doctors had started, use this. When they had a problem with the app, they would call their doctors. And the reason they called their doctors is because there was no help center. So doctors were getting inundated by calls from patients. But when I click on this button, it doesn't go there. Where do I find? And no doctor wanted that in their lives. So that was something around, simple again, but it's around setting up the support mechanism that, okay, if we want to see this change, we need to make sure that everything around the change is pointing in the direction of supporting the change. So those are the 4 pieces I'd recommend, kind of practical steps.
I love that. Well, and they truly are practical. And
right
now I'm just thinking though, because those were all things that help an organization take people through the change process. And that's important and like you said, very practical. And I'm still, I think, stuck in my own ego base mindset of, but this is happening to me. It's happening.
Yes.
How do I? So help me understand for our listeners, and now Tanya, for myself, knowing that change is personal and it's hard.
Yeah.
What would be one key takeaway that you would recommend that our listeners and myself can remember when we're going through change? So now this is the personal aspect of how do we embrace it? How do we move through it?
The first thing is you've highlighted it. It's awareness. Just knowing that you might not respond to change as you think you should or that you think you do, that's first step. Okay. It's the idea that as change approaches you as an individual, in your mind, you're able to pause and think, listening to what's going on inside of me, I'm not excited about this change. Just that moment of awareness is half the battle won. So if you are able to, as you are going through life, and the minute you encounter something that, you get that kind of icky feeling, oh, I don't want it, tried that before, that's insane, I'm going to quickly side with, A, B, and C because I'm going to resist this. Just to take one moment to pause and think, what is driving me right now? Okay. That is the battle won. So there will be still moments when you say, there's no way I can support this change. I don't want to lean into this change. But the more curious you could get around what's going on inside of you, the better able you can articulate that. And then, in fact, you can lead change in a much better way in your own life because you're able to figure out, well, the reason I'm resisting this change is because I think it's going to mean ABC. How can I test those possibilities? Is it true? A, B, and C? Maybe B is true. All right, how could I mitigate that? And you will find that you are very quickly starting to get into the habit of building a change muscle. Why is this important? Not because, of course it's good to be good with change because you show up well with others, you can move with the times, but even just for yourself in terms of anxiety reduction, to be able to build a change resilience and the change muscle is just a much more relaxing and helpful way to live. And you will continue to grow in much more accelerated ways.
Oh,
I
thank
agree
you.
with that. But I will tell you, Tanya, just like age catches up with many things in those muscles, atrophy over time if they're not used, do you think there's an age limit that is allergic to change when it comes to, technology, innovation, moving forward, or moving the cheese, basically? Hey, I've been doing this the same way for 25, 35, 45 years.
Right.
And that having a passion to upskill seems to have atrophied. Some of the conversations like, hey, don't approach that exec. They're just waiting on the retirement check to show up.
Right.
They're not going to make any movement. We all know who they are. We all
Right.
have identified who they are. But now it's just waiting out that time because upskill has to happen now because technology is moving so fast. This is one of those candidate moments on the buzz, folks, that we're talking about here. We know this is the elephant in the room. We know
Yeah.
who the executives are that are not moving the dial, that are not, hey, we're just going to wait and see. They're using the guise of healthcare moves slower than other industries.
Right.
No, you move slower than your industry allows. And so you're sitting behind that, not wanting to adopt, upskill, or change. And today's facts, you need someone that's nimble, able to take on more, adapt better, and integrate these systems and solutions at a more rapid pace. And
Yes.
so, do you think that there's some atrophy to age that happens if you don't see? Not saying I'm not generalizing here, folks, but I would say that for those that don't want to continue to upskill or educate or move away from, we've always done it that way. Do you think that's some of what we're seeing here? We see some of that happening as well in change.
I have to say, one of the more sobering moments in my career has been sitting in a room and realizing, like, I was the oldest in that room. And I was probably the one where they were looking at me thinking, like, she is not changing fast enough. And I it was like a mortifying moment. So Mike, all of that to say, we definitely become more set in our ways and take fewer risks as we age. Part of that is, it's biological and it's wired into us for good reasons, right? You find, in your teens, you are risk takers. As you become older, you learn how to boundary the risk taking behaviors. You also get accustomed to habits. You learn what works. You take shortcuts. It all makes sense, but the problem is it means that you don't adapt to change easily. So I think there is certainly truth to what you're saying. I don't think there's a particular age, but I do think it's a trend.
Okay.
That said, the strongest predictor of your next behavior is the behaviors that preceded it. So habits are a really, really powerful driver. And if you think about, just as, if you stretch daily, you grow more supple and you grow less injury prone. If you make a habit of building change muscle, you can get comfortable with change truly at any age, and you can even start to crave change.
That's it.
So, they've done all this research also to say, there's an added bonus to changing, which is that you can keep these synapses in the brain firing in all sorts of wonderful directions, right? And that brings a host of other health benefits. That's probably a story for another day. But I guess what I'm saying is anyone can become change agile. You do have to try a lot harder as you get older, just because you are fighting biology.
Biology catches up to all of us.
It
First
does.
things, death and taxes.
Yes. All the fun stuff, right?
All the fun
Yeah.
stuff. Tanya, this has been an awesome and insightful conversation today. I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, your expertise with us. Behavioral science is something that we all are a part of. It's touching us every day. It's all around us in our home, in our personal and our professional life, far reaching as far as the impacts in the healthcare space. But I want to thank you for this time today. Thank you so much.
I thank you back. It has been so fun to be here. I mean, you and Maureen are fantastic. And I just hope that listeners somewhere are thinking about how they can apply behavioral science. And anyone who wants to learn more, please ping me. I am easy to ping and I will be responsive back.
Oh my gosh. This has been an amazing conversation, and I hate to even see it come to a close, but I do want to make sure that our listeners do hear what Tanya is saying. If you're curious and you want to learn more about the incredible work that is being done at Vitality Group, or you want to know more about behavioral science, head to their website. It's www.vitalitygroup.com.
That's it. All right, that's it, folks, for today's episode of The Buzz. Don't forget to subscribe and like a review, and follow us on social media. For more insights and conversations, like leaders like Tanya, make sure you find us on The Buzz and keep your innovation alive. We'd like to also thank our sponsors, Panda Health, Elite Groups, and Natera, for showing us their love and sponsoring us on these podcasts. Until next time, keep buzzing.